All right, everyone. Right, it's so great to see so many of you here for our Train to Cessnock public meeting. I'm Miriam. I'll be your MC for the evening. Before we begin, I'd love to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Wanneroo people, and extend that respect to any Indigenous Australians present today. Firstly, a huge thanks to everyone for coming here tonight. We really appreciate the support from each one of you. The purpose of tonight is really to inform the community of the goals and motivation behind the Train to Cessnock initiative, and your attendance signifies not only your support for the campaign itself, but also your dedication to the collective well-being of our community, and we truly thank you for that. Another huge shout out to Yaron from Quirks for allowing us to use the venue for the meeting tonight. Yeah. Thank you. Yep. We really couldn't have done this without his support, so huge props to him. Just a couple of notes of housekeeping. So the bathrooms are just out the door, gents are just around the corner, and the ladies are a bit further around there. For the fire, we do have a fire exit just over here to my right, or else we can just head out the doors in which you came in. We do have a number of special guests here for tonight who we are absolutely stoked to have present. We have Meryl Swanson, the federal member for Paterson. We will have Clayton Barr, state member from Cessnock, joining us later on in the evening. On behalf of Jenny Aitchison, state member for Maitland and Minister for Regional Roads and Transport, we have Christine Boyd and Simon Hunter, as well as some other representatives from Transport for New South Wales. We also have several representatives from our local council, including Rosa Grine, John Moores, Paul Painter, Karen Jackson, Mitchell Hill, and Paul Dunn. If there is anyone else from the council here tonight, we apologise for the oversight. And we also have an apology from Dan Repiccioli, federal member for the Hunter, as he has a prior commitment for an Olympics information meeting tonight. So just a quick overview of the agenda for tonight. We have introduction and welcome, which I'm doing right now. We'll shortly hear from Andrew Fenwick about the need and ongoing campaign for the Train to Cessnock. And following him will be Bill Palazzi for the logistical side of things in the actual proposal. We'll then extend the opportunity for any comments from our elected representatives before we then open up the floor for Q&A, hopefully wrapping up around 7:30. All right, well, without further ado, I'd like to invite Andrew Fenwick, followed by Bill Palazzi, to discuss their insights into the campaign.
Well, that's a bit bright. Can't thank you enough for coming out. It's Tuesday night. The weather's a little bit dodgy. It really means a lot to have this level of engagement from so little interaction. But we haven't had to harass you. You've all turned up because it is such an important issue to the community, and it's a really, really good showing. When we first started this whole process, it was because I was running in the seat in the last state election, and in talking to the locals at the time, we had this conversation just kept popping up. Why aren't there trains? There's a line there. There's no trains on it. Why aren't we using this? And it was people from all walks of life. It wasn't just the youth wanting to get out of town. It was the older people or the disabled people. It was the people who wanted to commute to Newcastle. It was the people who wanted to commute from Newcastle into Cessnock to work. It was the people who wanted to do tourism, special operators that wanted to run special trains on the corridor, for Steamfest, and special picnic trains from Sydney to here to the vineyards. There were so many topics came up through that campaign. And I don't know about you, but one thing I really don't like about elections and politics is when they get on a platform and they talk about something that's really important and they don't get the result they want, and you never hear from them again. The people who do win an election, it wasn't their platform, so they don't have to do anything about it either. So at the end of the election, I was looking at the list of things that we'd talked to people about, and the one that really stood out as a bugbear was the fact that there was an operational train line through all the villages to Bellbird and no trains for people to catch. So this is why we're here, and we've done a really good job getting to this point. So if you just want to move that next slide for us. So this gives you the timeline of the process. So after the election, we did this sort of think about what's important, and then we looked at the steps. So we did the petition, to get anything happening with an electronic petition with a parliament, you need 20,000 plus signatures. We knew we were never going to get that. And but we did get 2,750 people once again, this was pretty much just me and Facebook, and nearly 3,000 people signed on, which was a very, very strong positive push from the community to do this. But that's a very passive thing to do, put a petition in and wait to see what the politicians do with it. So luckily, in the process of evaluating the next steps, I reacquainted myself with Bill Palazzi, who's somebody that I worked with back in 1995-ish with projects engineering for the State Rail Authority, who had moved from Sydney to become a local here. So now this is a railway issue for a rail engineer, and Bill very quickly saw the benefits and jumped in. So everything from me onwards tonight is what you get when you throw a rail engineer into a rabbit hole and say, find me a reason why this should happen, because you'll see all that soon. We've had lots of media engagement. It's been a very interesting thing how interested the media are, because they're actually now chasing us for the stories. So at the start, it was us talking to them and going, oh, we're doing this thing. And they go, oh, yeah. Now they're ringing us. They're harassing the politicians a little bit. They're asking questions. They're doing all the things that you'd like the media to do in a good state. So Bill went down the rabbit hole, and then we found out that we could put in a public submission for funding in the budget, in the state budget. And what we need is for a feasibility study to be done to prove that this is the right thing to do. Now, at the moment, the time frame would say when the government's finished its strategic planning, then they'll think about a feasibility study. We sort of want to do it the other way around, so that when the planning comes to that point, they've got the information they need to make a decision. So that submission's in. We've had our response from the petition, which was very diplomatic, which is what you'd expect. And now we're all here, which is perfect. What have we got next, Tony? So what came out at the end of last year was the City of Cessnock's traffic and transport strategy. And it really highlights some of the reasons why this has to happen. One, the population explosion. In the Transport of New South Wales strategic plan, the population was supposed to grow to 85,000. A couple of years later, now they're talking 112, 113,000. We need to get ahead of that with the infrastructure to support those people. What else was there? In the last strategy that this council put out, one of the highest things on their list of importance was the lack of public transport. This one, it's traffic congestion. Interesting relationship. But there's no mention of public transport in this new strategy. So just a few years after the last one, all of a sudden public transport's not an issue. And if you talk to anyone here, of course it is. And because of all that congestion, road traffic, the volume of traffic coming through the place, the accidents, the impatience, the danger that it causes people to be caught up in that traffic is enormous. So we're going to try and think about buses with 40 people on them, or trains with 150, buses that only run for a couple of runs, to an hourly service. We can shift people. Can we get the next one there, Tony? So why now? Well, the need's there. We've got the population along the corridor. We've got a corridor. This is still an operational corridor, which means the amount of work to be done to get it working is less. If we let this go, it'll become a real problem. There's rolling stock available, which Bill will talk about all that sort of stuff later. And I can't remember what was on the rest of that. Oh, and the final one, which sort of goes back to it's an operational line. If we go into the strategic planning with this, all of a sudden it starts to degrade to a point where it becomes a really expensive thing to do, or the owners of the line who don't want it sell portions of it off. And then you've got to buy that back, or you've got to go around it. And then you've got all the environmental issues and all the things that at the moment we don't have. We have an operational line that needs to be renovated, and it's doable now at a very affordable price. If we push this 10 years, it's going to go from being a $150 to $200 million project to a hundreds of millions of dollars. So that'll do me. We'll bring Bill up now to go through his part. And as I said, Bill's got a lot of information here. On the website, you can access all the information. So this business case is on the website to download. All the correspondence that we've done to date is on the website. All the media is on the website. So if we can welcome Bill Palazzi up onto the stage. Wave around, man.
Cheers. Tony, am I right to take this out of the holder?
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. And I'd just like to echo Andrew's thanks for everyone coming. It's really gratifying and pleasing to see everyone coming and turning up to what I think is an important issue for our community, and it's great to see the support there. Just a bit about myself. As Andrew said, my name is Bill Palazzi. I've lived for 20 years up in Lovedale with my wife, who's sitting down here. Debbie's name. Her job is to tell me when I'm talking too fast. So if I start talking too fast and I don't stop, you know who's failed there, not me. We've had 4 kids. We've lived in this community, bringing up those 4 kids. Are now getting older. Actually, the MC you saw before, that's me. She's my youngest daughter. She's awesome, as are all my kids for that matter. But anyway, and we've lived in this community, and we know what the issues of the community are. As in, we've been through, the netball, the school, the rugby, the dancing lessons, all that stuff. But as well the issues of transport and that stuff, which is why when talking with Andrew late last year, we thought, actually, this is something I could do. To give you a bit of a background, I work in railways. I've worked in railways my entire career for 35 years or more now. For the last 15 or so, I've been working in rail strategy, as in helping railway owners and operators of that to figure out how to spend money and how to spend it well, and then helping to spend the money, and then go and seek the money off the business as well. So, for example, I was working on the Inland Rail Alignment Study, which led to the money being allocated for that project and the project being defined where it is. I've been working with the governments in Queensland and Victoria on major projects in their area. More recently, I've been working with Transport for New South Wales on their a program called Digital Systems, which is modernising the entire signalling across Sydney and getting the money for that. So this is the sort of stuff I do. Doing this is my day job, except I've been doing it in the evening. So that's where I'm from. So what I'm going to show you now is what I think is possible. I put this together because I think too much of the conversation about this corridor is actually dominated by, in fact, by myths. We have this sort of series of conversations. It'll be too long. It won't be able to be a good service. Who's going to catch it? It's going to cost too much. All that sort of stuff. We're trying to bust some of those myths and trying to illustrate what's possible, and then help people understand how good it would be for the community, or what it could mean for the community. So that's what I'm trying to do. Let me say, ultimately, what is built will be up to Transport for New South Wales to decide. So our submission, as Andrew said, is for Transport for New South Wales to put some money aside to do a business case, to do a design, all that sort of stuff. And that's for them to decide. So this is what's possible. It may or may not be what's actually built. It's probably going to be similar because we've got a line there. We're not deviating the line, but we'll see. Anyway, so with that said, let me get started. If you can move on to the next slide, Andrew, thanks, Tony. So this here, just to talk about the South Maitland Railway, my guess is there's someone in this room who knows more about the South Maitland Railway than I do. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But this was a corridor. You can see the map there. You won't be able to see it very well. Built by mining companies to support mines, starting in Maitland. Let me just rearrange things here. So, starting in Maitland, which is here, and going that way. This map's from about the 1950s. Newcastle's here, down to Sydney. That's the line up to Singleton that way. So this whole area, a whole stack of corridors were built by individual mining companies, and then they came together over time to be the South Maitland Railway. Started in about 1892, finished at about the early sort of 20th century. So those mines, of course, were active, but they all started shutting down in about the 1970s. Passenger trains were running on the corridor. Primarily, the passenger trains were there to transport people to the mines. So once the mines started shutting down, there's no need for passengers. All those companies have no reason to run passengers. So passenger services ceased. But the really interesting thing about this corridor is it's been there so long, the community has built up around it. So it's actually running through, as Andrew said, through a stack of areas where we have communities. Now, one of the problems with a railway line if you're building a new one to a place, is you actually have to build a corridor, and that means you actually almost destroy the community you're trying to serve because you're building this massive corridor through the centre of a place. We don't have that problem here, and that's awesome. That's one of the great opportunities we have because of the legacy of this railway. Thanks, Tony. I've divided these diagrams here in, where's that document? This document here, the case for the train to Cessnock, as Andrew said, that's on our website, and you should go there and have a look at it. It's incredibly well written, of course. But you won't be able to see some of the detail on this, of course, but if you go to this, you'll be able to get all the detail. Just download it and have a read of it. So this first section here is from Maitland through to effectively the freeway. And so the corridor comes out here at what's called East Greta Junction. It was East Greta Junction because the first part of that mining railway was built to East Greta Mine, which is about where Gilliston Heights is right now. And that's why it's East Greta Junction. And if you're driving across the overpass there at Maitland, if you look to your left, you'll see it deviating off to the side. That's where it starts. And the orange comes down here through Gilliston Heights and then down towards the freeway. On each one of these maps, what I've done, just to illustrate what's possible here, is drawn a station, and I've drawn a circle, which is 1 kilometre, and another one that's 2 kilometres. One of the things that kept being said about this corridor is, our people are too spread apart. The LGA's got people all over the place. Well, I want to show you through this maps that actually it's not the case. We can build a corridor here, we can build stations that service an awful lot of people. Anyone who's been to Gilliston Heights recently will know as well, all this area through here is for development. This area through here is for development. This is going to be houses end to end before we know it, and hence the need for a railway. So a railway station there would give you coverage of just about everyone at Gilliston Heights. A kilometre, like what's walking distance station, maybe a kilometre. It depends on who you're debating. But the reality is, once you start getting things like personal mobility scooters, that sort of stuff, electric scooters, this distance will change. So really, this is almost serving the entire community there and the community as it's growing as well, or it has the possibility of serving that. Almost 5,000 people there in the 2021 census. Let's not forget, 2 years ago was the flooding, which cut off all the way through here and all the way through here, and these people were in Ireland for 2 weeks. So again, providing a better transport access into here is really awesome solution for them. Thanks, Tony. So this section here is through Curry, and I'm sure this is probably the section that people are most familiar with because as you're driving down Cessnock Road, you see the railway and you see Neath Station and you see Western Station and stuff like that. Again, these stations largely reflect the places the stations used to be. And again, with my circles of 1 and 2 kilometres, you can see you largely get coverage of the entirety of that population, which is about 20,000 people. So again, back to that point of, is there enough people to support this railway? Absolutely. There's 20,000 people there who are within walking distance-ish of that station. Thanks, Tony. And this is the last section down through Cessnock. Now, you can see it comes through here down from Neath down to Kersley, that goes at the back of Cessnock and the round past the netball courts and then down through to Bellbird. This is, again, in this area, about 25,000 people in the 2021 census. That adds up to, along the corridor, about 48,000 people. Noting what Andrew said before, that was 2021. In 2041, it's expected to grow by 40%, so that's not 48,000 people. That's now 65 or 70,000 people in that area. We all know that Bellbird is booming. We know that Gilliston Heights is booming. We know that the Cliff Lee is booming. We know there's houses being built, massive houses built out in Millfield. So there's all sorts of people going in there, and the railway goes straight through the middle of these towns. Now, this one here, the alignment, as you can see, doesn't give you as good coverage of the population as we've got through Curry, and so we've got a proposal in the future. But our focus really is to say, we can run this railway. There's an existing railway corridor there. There's existing track. You can put trains on there, and you could run it very slowly, probably in a week's time. But we can actually upgrade it cheaply, as Andrew said, and we can get it serviceable for passenger trains within a small amount of money and a short period of time, and run that service. And that means our argument is, let's get it going as is. Let's get something happening, and then we can make the enhancements later. So we at least start getting a service to people who need it. Because all these people, whether you're in these areas or whether you're back in Western or Abermain, you've got no options. You've got no transport. If you don't have a car, you're going nowhere. I guess you might have a bike or a scooter. Thanks, Tony. So another myth we often hear is it's going to take too long. Why would anyone take the train on this train to Newcastle? And I think this comes from the fact that previously trains were running slowly. It was a coal railway. The trains were running on a coal railway, so it wasn't a passenger railway. So they were trundling along the track. They'd get to Maitland. They'd have to change trains. They'd have to get in. It would take forever. We've done a manner of analysis. We've looked through the alignment. We've looked through the gradients, and have concluded that actually you get from Cessnock to Newcastle in 50 minutes. Now, you can't drive that on a good day. So Cessnock to Newcastle, 50 minutes, Curry to Newcastle, 37 minutes, or, look at this, to Maitland, 9 and 19 minutes. Now, those are express services, so you can see, I've got on the line here, if you can see it enough. You've got, starting at Maitland, the track going up here, that's the express track, and then another one with all stops. So what we've suggested is that we should run, some express, some all stops to give you those journey times. The all stops from Cessnock is about 55 minutes to Newcastle. Again, this is as good as you'll drive it. And certainly at peak hour, you're not driving for that. You're not driving that time. One of the opportunities we have right now is the New South Wales government is purchasing a whole new regional fleet. So we have in the past the Explorers and the XPTs. This is an Explorer there. And sorry? Sorry, yes, you're right. That's in Endeavour. They're the same train, by the way, just different colour scheme. Thank you for that correction. So we have those ones. They were introduced in the XPTs in the 80s, the Explorers, Endeavours in the 90s. They're all being retired or being made redundant by this new regional fleet, which is being delivered over the next 3 or 4 years. Some of the Explorers or Endeavours will be moved to Newcastle to augment the fleet here. What we're saying is we can just move a few more. And our estimate is we need 5 trains to run an hourly service to Cessnock all the time, and then a half-hourly service at peak times, half-hourly going in the morning, coming back out from Newcastle in the evening. 5 trains. They already exist. We don't have to buy them. We just got to refurbish them. They're already moving trains up here, the Endeavours up here. So we just move a few more and we can service this thing. So we don't have the cost. Right now, we don't have the cost of additional trains. We don't have the cost of new training people in the crew and to drive them. We don't have the cost of stabling or maintenance because they're already being built for these trains coming up here. In fact, some of them already operate here. Thanks, Tony. So our estimate, so we've done a fair bit of work trying to figure out what this is going to cost. Our estimate is between 100 and 200 million. Probably, I think, likely at the top end, because whilst you can make decisions to make things cheaper, my guess is Transport for New South Wales won't. They'll choose to do some of the more expensive things. So somewhere between 150 and 200 million is probably a reasonable cost. We put 100 to 200 in the thing. And 3 to 4 years construction. As we said before, this is not a corridor that needs complete rebuilding. We don't need to do, we know where the line is. We don't have to do alignment studies. We've got to just refurbish a corridor that's an existing rail corridor that could be carrying, that Horizon has the right to put trains on it now. Let me give you a number. 18 billion. 18 billion is Transport for New South Wales capital budget annually right now and for the next few years. That was what, I don't know what it'll be in the next state budget. That was what it was in the last one, 18 billion for 4 years. What we're asking for here is $10 million for the next year, and then let's say it's 200 million. So over 4 years, $50 million a year, shared with 50-50 with the federal government, which is the typical arrangement for infrastructure. So that's 25 million a year from Transport for New South Wales budget. So let me just run that through you. For 5 years, 10 million for the first, 25, 25, 25, something like that. And we've got this corridor up and running and trains servicing this community. If their budget is 18 billion a year, we are talking spare change, literally spare change to get this up and running to provide a service to this community. Thanks, Tony. Now, you won't be able to see the detail of these graphs down the back, but hopefully you can see the comparisons in the grey and the Train to Cessnock in orange. So the top one, Andrew described the rabbit hole I've been down. One of these things was I went through and I've looked in every similar service around Sydney. So you've got the electric trains in Sydney and you've got diesel services attached to the end of them. So every similar service. Kiama to Bomaderry, or Macarthur to Moss Vale, or down to Goulburn. And I looked up the populations in those areas that those trains are servicing right now. And then I compared that to the Train to Cessnock. So remember we said 48,000 people in the 2021 census for this corridor? That, all but Macarthur Moss Vale, that is higher than all the other ones. There is, Talara to Dungog, I mean, we know that. It's about 5,000 people. Moss Vale Goulburn is about 32,000 people. Kiama to Bomaderry, that's if you count the entirety of Nowra. So remember, if you've been to Nowra, you probably have. Bomaderry is on the north side. You've got the river, you've got the south side, and that's where Kiama is. You count the entirety of Kiama, you get something like, Nowra, you get something like 38,000 people. We've got more people in this corridor that the train could service than all those there. So if you ask me, is this a train service that should operate and is worthwhile operating? The facts on the ground say yes, because we do it right now in plenty of other corridors. This one here. So I've looked at same analysis, but I've looked at a range of projects and said, okay, how do I assess value? What's an equivalence of value? So I've assessed it as the dollar spent per person that could be provided a rail service, okay? Again, Train to Cessnock here. So Parramatta Light Rail Stage 1 took over the old Carlingford line in Sydney, goes around through Parramatta to Westmead, 2.75 billion, servicing 130,000 people. That comes down to about $20,000 per person. And remember, those people already have a station at Parramatta, a station at Westmead, a station at Harris Park. They have a metro being built servicing them, stations at Parramatta, station at Westmead. They've got buses all over the place, and they're getting new facilities, more facilities, at $20,000 a person. 5 dock station, so this is a metro station on Metro West, one station. So let's ignore the cost of the actual corridor, which is billions, 25 billion, and focus on just the station, because we're building that station to service the people of 5 dock. So a typical station, about $350,000. Sorry, $350 million. The population of that area, 15,000 in sort of that same region on a good day. So you end up with something like, again, $20,000 per person being spent to provide a service. We are talking $200 million, 50,000 people, about $4,000 per person. My numbers could be wrong by a factor of 5, and this is still as good value as any project. So, and this is before I get to things like this. Sunshine Coast. So just recently, Queensland Government announced a line from... Sorry, I'm getting carried away. Queensland Government announced a line from Beerburrum to Caboolture, servicing the Sunshine Coast. $5.5 billion at the bottom end. That was the bottom end of the estimate for 93,000 people. So again, we're looking somewhere up close to $60,000 per person to provide a rail service. What's our project? $4,000 per person. Cheapest chips. Thanks, Tony. So this is my last slide. So this is when the other thing is, okay, it's a worthwhile project now. It serves as a need now. It serves as a community now. There's an absolute, no reason not to do it. But this is not about now only, because a rail asset is something for the future. And so the question is, where could that go? And we've come up with a few ideas here. For example, things I would put in the short term, a station at Loxford. So you've got all the work happening up at the former Hydro site, the development around there, the new housing, servicing Curry Station. Yeah, you might actually want to build that from the start, but maybe as a second stage. We've identified this alternative alignment through Cessnock. Remember, I mentioned that the current alignment doesn't really give you great coverage of Cessnock in terms of walking distance to station. An alternative alignment would maybe do a better option. The actual former station at Cessnock was down, I guess, where the imaging place is now near the Railway Hotel, just across the road from Aaron's bus depot. Or Aaron's what used to be Aaron's bus depot. So there's an opportunity, I think, to actually look at an alignment through there as a future stage and figure out how we can actually get a station back close to Cessnock, maybe do one at Aberdeen, at West Cessnock, and provide a better coverage for people in that area. Look, there's other things going on as well. There's obviously council's got a plan for a southern bypass of Cessnock, which they want to use the rail corridor now. We'd have to work through those issues together to figure out, those that would have to be worked through together to figure out what the right alignment was. But we think there's an option here. Other things I would add, extension of Millfield. It's booming down there. The corridor goes part way. It doesn't go all the way. Why not do that? Heritage Precinct. Andrew's mentioned the heritage operators have an interest in this line, but there'll be a whole new opportunity. This is rail heritage, by the way. Whole new business and tourist opportunity for Cessnock and this area, having heritage trains running up and back this corridor, up and down the corridor, separate to the main line, separate to anything else. So it would be a great opportunity. And then freight, Hydro has providing a freight link to those for heavy industry, things like train building or whatever in those places. So that's some of the things we've done. That's my last slide. And I'll hand back to Mim.
All right. Thank you to both Andrew and Bill. I don't know, as someone who's grown up in this community, I mean, as Dad said, we've been here 20 years. I'm 17, so I've grown up here. I've lived here my whole life, and it's amazing to have people who are so dedicated to improving our community and really doing something that's really going to benefit every single one of us in this room. I'd now like to invite Meryl Swanson if she has any comments, and then followed by Christine Boyd and Simon Hunter.
Yes. Sorry, thank you, darling. I'm sporting a torn ACL.
Oh, that's no good.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mim. I'm sporting a ruptured ACL at the moment, so I'm not as lithe as I usually am. Look, thank you so much, Mim, and I acknowledge that we're here on the land of the Wanneroo and pay my respects and say g'day to everyone. I know we've got lots of representatives from Cessnock Council in the room particularly, and I also want to acknowledge Christine Boyd, who's here on behalf of Jenny Aitchison, the Minister for Regional Roads and Transport, and Simon Hunter, who is very busy doing an integrated transport plan for the state at the moment. But I just really want to thank Andrew and Bill for their effort and energy. And look, I think anyone listening to that presentation would say this feels like a no-brainer. And I get that these things just seem so easy. The competing pressures that we have are budgets. Now, I know Andrew has just very clearly pointed out that this is, on his figures, a value for money proposition. And even if he was wrong, I think he said a factor of 5, it would still make it good value. What I'm in favour of is further investigation of this. And it is so interesting to have Aaron in the crowd with us this evening. Whilst I'm only 53, I am born and bred here, and I come from very many generations of people who've lived in this area, and my parents and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and great aunts and uncles all talked about catching the train. And they talked about stations like Caledonia and a whole range of places that we don't even speak about anymore. So we did have a very vibrant rail history. The caveat is that we did have the coal mines and that's where a lot of people worked, and that's where the service really came from. But the other aspect of this that I completely acknowledge is the growth in our area. And I particularly just want to touch on a couple of things Bill said. I think Loxford is a really interesting and good proposition. Now, I can remember catching one of Aaron's buses from Head and Greeter to Maitland, and then catching, in those days, the train from Maitland to Newcastle Beach. Actually, it was Nobby's in those days. It wasn't Newcastle, it was Nobby's Beach. But the thing was, at Gelliston Heights, it was all hay sheds. And these days it's houses. Now, I know the development that is going in called Loxford Waters will have, in the first stage, about 2,430 homes. So then I believe there'll be further stages. Also, on top of that, as Bill mentioned, we have the hydro development, which will be industrial and light industrial. We have the Curry gas plant, which I'm very proud to have fought for and kept. And all of that precinct is going to create jobs. So there has been some talk, well, you don't put a railway line in unless people have got jobs to go to. I do think that there will be jobs, particularly around that Loxford area. And I do know that our area is growing. So again, I am not against this project. I think that it's absolutely worthy of investigation. I do partner with my friends in the state government, and transport is their responsibility primarily. But if this project is shown to have value, and if we can do it in a way that answers the questions that the state government will have about this, then I think it is worthwhile investigating it. And, for what it's worth, as Bill said, projects like this have to be successful, the federal government would need to tip in. So I would be not against advocating for it if it's stacked up on, and it does have to be accurately and fairly investigated. Yeah, I'll take some questions in a moment. I'm not saying that Bill's numbers aren't right. All I'm saying is that they'll have to be assessed. That's any taxpayer outlay will have to be assessed by the relevant departments. I'm not from the State Transport Department. They would have to have a look at it. But I'm saying I've turned up. I'm here this evening. I'm interested in this project. I'm broadly supportive of the concept, and I really would like to see where we could take this. So, that's my commitment to you. And I think that, Bill and Andrew have done an amazing job. And Mim is right. We are lucky to have people in our community who are very civic-minded and very expert and passionate enough to do the work at night outside of their 9-to-5 jobs. And the last thing I'd say is, I know we live in a growing area. It's, incredibly beautiful, and a lot of people want to come and live here. We know that our roads are very congested. We know that we don't have enough public transport, and we know that that growth is only going to continue. So how do we service it? Well, I think that, it is worthy of further investigation. So I'm happy to take some questions later. I'm sure. What was your question, sir? I just said to you a moment ago that I think this is absolutely worthy of further scrutiny and investigation, but I can't stand here and say it's a no-brainer. I think Bill's a very smart person, and I think he's done a wonderful job, but I think it does need to be independently assessed, and it needs to be assessed within the framework of a complete strategy of transport for the hunter. Like, what else are the state government going to do? So that's how broadly, yeah. Hi. Sorry. Yeah. And I hear you. Absolutely. Yeah. We are. Mim's just telling me we're going to have a Q&A session in a minute, so I won't take over. But I take your point. I listen to my community all the time, and that's sorry. Well, that's what I'm here. I am listening. I'm participating, and you can form your own opinion about why I've turned up. Good on you. Thanks.
Alrighty. Thank you, Meryl. We'll now have Christine Boyd and Simon Hunter, and then after that we'll go into our Q&A session, and every one of you will have the opportunity to contribute an opinion and ask a question to one of the people that we have here today. All right, there you go.
Thanks, Mim. So many familiar faces in the room and friends. I'm a Cessnock local, and I'm also the Chief of Staff for the Minister for Regional Transport and Roads in Sydney, Jenny Aitchison. Unfortunately, she couldn't be with us tonight, but has asked me to come along and represent her and listen to the community. I've also got Simon Hunter, who is the Chief Transport Planner at Transport, and also Tiff and Corinne here as well. One of the things at the last election, the Labor government made a commitment to look at strategic regional integrated transport plans, which was to look at, not just road, but rail, buses, all different modes of transport and how they're connected to other towns. So Simon has been very busy looking at those. He's actually working on the Hunter one at the moment. So he's here to provide any feedback that you've got into that plan to make sure rail is considered. So I'll hand over to Simon, and he can provide some more information on where he's up to within that strategic regional integrated transport plan.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here tonight. As Chris has said, Minister Aitchison has given us a very clear direction that the Strategic Regional Integrated Transport Plan has to be based on listening to communities and listening to the inputs of communities. We have had sessions with the property development sector, with the Committee for the Hunter, with councils, with joint organisations, with many of your elected representatives to understand the priorities that they are putting forward into this plan. And as part of that process, the Minister asked that I attend tonight with Chris so that we could hear firsthand this proposal. We are and have been aware of this proposal for a number of months. I believe there was a meeting earlier this year with Bill and Andrew to get across the detail of it. We have the business case, and it is being considered in the development of the Strategic Regional Integrated Transport Plan. Part of the planning process is to look at all of the needs and wants that are put forward by the community. We've had a number of representations made on road upgrades, on and off ramps to the M1 and to the Hunter Expressway, on road upgrades that are needed for development to occur and housing to occur. We, of course, also have proposals for the Hunter line from the ARTC around more freight access and a number of other competing priorities. But this plan is the first of the Strategic Regional Integrated Transport Plans that's being developed because of the growth that is occurring in the Hunter and the transport challenges that are here. The plan is well underway in development with a view to us taking it back to the government for consideration in Q3 and potentially being released on exhibition in Q4 this year. I can't talk to the specifics of what will be in the plan at this point because we are very much in the development and discovery phase for that, which includes listening to all of the submissions from various parts of the communities. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here and hear more about this project, to see the amount of community support that is here and in the room. And from our perspective, we're very well aware of the proposal. If it were progressed, if there was funding allocated, review of the costings, review of station locations, conditions of the track and the alignment would all be part of next steps as was outlined by Bill earlier. But thank you for the opportunity again to be here and to listen to the proposal this evening. Thank you.
All right. We're now going to open up the floor for our Q&A. So I'll just get Bill and Andrew to come up onto the stage. We have... Oh, whoops. You guys can have this one. All right. So we do have a couple rules on the screen up there just to make sure this runs a bit like as smoothly as we possibly can. Primarily, we want to have time for everybody to contribute an opinion, so we want to keep it concise and also respectful, as all of the people you see on the stage here are volunteering their time to be here, and we want to respect them as much as we can. This is not an opportunity for a rant or to, express your personal opinion in a very long-winded way. Just keep it respectful and concise as much as we can. All right, so who would like to ask a question? What? Oh, yes, there's also a public microphone over here, so if you'd like to line up in front of that, you're welcome to do so, or else you can just yell out a question, whatever you prefer. All right.
Yep.
Hi, very impressive presentation, and appreciate the efforts that's gone into it and into the business case. My name's Sam Reich. I'm from Newcastle, but I drove here this afternoon at about 4:30 to 5 o'clock, and I feel your pain. And we like to say, and I'm a bit of a transport wonk, and we like to say that you don't go on a diet by loosening your belt. You go on a diet by reducing your intake of food, and that means reducing traffic on the road is the really only way to get on top of traffic congestion. It just occurs to me, to say this very quickly, all of the competing proposals for this line would require state government acquisition. So it seems to me that a very first step before the government needs to commit to building or restoring train service is to acquire the line and to start the process with the current owners for acquisition. Secondly, whether the consultant's report, the feasibility study, would be 5 million, 10 million or more, it should also be pretty quickly initiated. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Sam. I did cut my little presentation a bit short because we were running out of time. In there is the 3 steps of what we're actually requesting from the state. And the first one is the acquisition and protection of the line. Because if we don't do that in a real hurry, the chances of the owners at one end tearing it up and taking all the infrastructure out because that's their obligation to do so, or at the other end, selling off the bits they don't want. And if we lose the bit in the middle, this project's dead in the water, because the realignments, the property purchasing, everyone's going to go, oh, it's $1 billion, we're not going to do it. So yes, thanks for acknowledging that was part of the gig. But yeah, we do want that study moving faster than probably the state wants to, but it's more because we're not going to get the acquisition done in a hurry if the state hasn't made a decision to start doing something. And we've always had the feeling from the meetings we've had that both the owners are very open to this. So I really think between us all, we should be able to come up with a nice win-win situation for the track owners and the community and actually get something moving.
G'day, I'm Steve Miller. I'm from Maitland. I've been interested in railways and that sort of thing for most of my life. In fact, all of my life. We're just for the sake of, before I ask my question, just for the sake of the audience, I'd like to point out, and that it was sort of implied that there are actually stations at most of these places, including at, believe it or not, it's actually known as Aberdare Junction, but at Loxford there's actually a railway station there in the middle of bushes. You can walk along the old rail corridor from Stamford Merthyr and goes virtually right to there, so it's quite accessible. There'd be no problem, putting a station there, particularly with the new housing estate going in. So I believe it should be amongst the first stage, but anyway, that's aside the point. The other point is you talked about the fact that your petition was unable to achieve its projected, to get the number of signatures required. I know myself, I'd be willing to volunteers sometime, and of course we've got a room full of prospective volunteers. What are the chances that we could hold another petition that's sort of more grassroots to actually try and achieve that necessary number to get it actually read, and then ongoing, time, in the future to try and sort of forge, get this project on the track, so to speak.
Yeah, and your point's taken that it's about people on the ground, and at the beginning of all this, there wasn't people on the ground. So basically, we had a QR code in shop windows and a little bit of a Facebook campaign. And 2,750 people doesn't sound like a lot, but if you look at the way the online petitioning system works in the Parliament, the NRMA recently ran one on it was a really strong issue that you'd expect lots of support for. Mm. And they got their 20,000 signatures, so it will get debated and they'll talk about it and be an inquiry. But they've got access to 2.8 million members that they can email, send a magazine to, harass them on Facebook, do all that stuff, and they got 0.007% response. We got 0.04%.
Well, thank you.
So as a response from a group, from 65,000 people, it was actually a very good response for what we were doing. But we're in waiting mode now. We have to see how budget submissions go, what Transport does. Let's see what happens if it doesn't go the way we want. Maybe there is room for a on-the-ground paper petition because they only need 10,000 signatures.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, the thing is, what I'm suggesting is you've got able-bodied people which are certainly willing to give some time. I'm sure there'd be people here
we would hope so.
Willing to put up time. So
thanks for that suggestion. Thanks.
Just while our next question is coming up, to your point around stations, you did right, there's stations all along the corridor. My view is we would use some of those, but actually you'd look at where the population is now and where the right spot is for stations now, because those stations were built obviously for former use, for former population. So what's the right answer now? Some of them I think are absolutely the right spot, like Western. It's right in the centre of town. It's right the good spot. Other ones, less so. Cessnock obviously doesn't exist. So, yeah, it's a good point. There are stations, is stuff you can reuse, but, yeah, you do the assessment.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So I wanted to start to say I'm utterly for this project, and part of my hobby is sort of transport planning as well. So I've looked into this as you have as well, and I came to about the same cost, 100 to 200 million. So it's quite equitable, and I think it's sound, scalable and sensible to do it. But there's one thing that I think you've forgotten in this and that you haven't factored, and that's the cost to buy votes. We have the regional transport minister's representatives here and the first thing that they would mention would be the cost. It isn't so much about the cost, but the cost required to buy votes. So shiny new metro lines, they do buy votes. Packing more people into Sydney with new facilities buys votes. Whilst we can undertake sensible planning outcomes to improve the region and access for everyone within the region, your numbers do stack up. But what doesn't is the representation of elected officials to represent us in state parliament. We're lucky they're here today to hear this. So the work has already been done, and I'd like them to stand up for us and do something.
Yep. Awesome. One of the other slides that I didn't do was a little brief overview of a survey that we did. Once again, it was a really great example of the level of engagement on this issue. That we did a survey monkey, 10 questions, put it out in just Facebook posts. We got 955 responses in a couple of weeks. And people in government know you pull a survey, if you get a couple hundred, you're lucky. Pollsters will make decisions on national political wins based on 1,000 or 1,200 responses to surveys. So to get 955 quick responses in this was very good. So I don't know if Tony, slides up there. So we quickly look at this. Do you feel the government needs to acquire it? 95% yes. Do you feel the government should be taking action this to upgrade the line and start regular passenger services? 95% yes. Will you use it? 95-ish% yes. Do you think it'll happen? Not so much. If this is a priority project for New South Wales government, do you feel, even if with a strong case supporting it, the current government will take action? That's looking a bit glum. Now, if I was a Labor politician and half the people in the survey say, my representative won't look after me, or they're just not sure, that makes up a pretty big number. Less than 50, or just less than 50% actually think it'll happen. Now, I think that's pretty sobering if I was a government representative, that your constituents have such little faith that it doesn't have to be a pork barrelling. It's actually a service that's required. So we are on the same
It's
page
based
on that
on
one.
history, so the whole region doesn't get anything really.
Well, it's 107 years of loyal Labor voting. That's what you get.
My point.
Can I just respond to that?
Thank you.
I do think. Thank you for that. For bringing that up. In relation to, hang on, I'm probably just too close to that microphone there. That feedback there. In response to the point that we've voted Labor for 100 years and we haven't received anything, that's something I hear pretty frequently, and it does make me feel quite upset because Labor governments have delivered for this region, and I stand here as a case in point. I fought really hard to have the M1 extended and the Raymond Terrace bypass, and anyone who's driving through Taro at the moment, you will see an enormous amount of work. At the moment, there is approximately $3.5 billion with a B, $3.5 billion being spent on our region from the federal and state governments in roadworks alone. Now, I know there's a lot more to be done, but I just need to say that. Just hang on a second. I'm answering a general question, and if you'd like to ask me a question, sir, here is the microphone. Have some courage and step up to it. Now, so we are working really hard. I am from the federal government. I am not a state representative, but I am here and I've heard you and I am listening to this community like I always do and have and will. And I can hear that this is, I know that this is an important issue. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it was. So again, I reiterate to you, I hear that this is an important issue. I want to work with my state colleagues to investigate it further. And if this stacks up, which I don't doubt it will, I'm not doubting Bill's numbers when I say that, but I can't stand here before you in good conscience and say, oh yes, I definitely think we should do this until the proper investigations are done. Then I will support this project. And I do support it in principle. I want to see people be able to move around and catch a train from Cessnock to Newcastle. I want young people to have options that they currently don't have as many options. I've just been out to Farley in the last week or so. That hasn't even been mentioned in this conversation. There are thousands of houses going up out there. I know where the houses are being built. I know this electorate. I'm 54 in September and I was born and raised here in Head and Greta. So don't think that I don't get it. And I've got kids that were born and raised here too, and I want their kids to be able to go to places like we all want to be able to do and go to work and have good jobs. So I get it. I'm here. I'm listening. In principle, I think this has got some chops. I think it makes a lot of sense, but it has to be adequately and properly investigated. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Meryl.
Sorry, before I ask a question, can I just make a comment as well? Look, I personally think it should be adequately investigated. That's why we've said the next step is to do the business case and stuff. And as a taxpayer, I want the government to assess everything, because I don't want random people like myself coming up with some proposal and them saying, okay, let's do that. Because whilst I trust myself, I don't trust them, okay? But the other thing I'd say is when we talk about costs, so we've put a cost there. We've actually heard from our previous questioner saying that he thought the cost was reasonable. Okay, that's fine. The amount it will cost will depend on choices made. And it's no different from me saying to you, if you say to me, how much will it cost to get a car? And I'll say to you, $50,000 to get you one. Well, you could go and spend $250,000 and get a car. And I'm wrong, and you're going to say, was your estimate wrong? No, you can get a car for $50,000. You just chose to do something else. So it will depend on the cost, the proposal and the scope that Transport for New South Wales thinks is appropriate and assesses appropriate. My comment would be, as a proponent of this though, we should be encouraging Transport for New South Wales to get it in and get it in quick. Don't overblow it. Don't make it into the solution to solve everything. Don't go and double the track and solve that. Get a service in, focus on what's going to be value from the community now and quick, and then look at how we upgrade that later. And that's where we get up costs like what I've got.
So, Greg.
Righto, thank you very much. My name's Greg Harris, and please excuse, I do have a problem with my voice box. So if it breaks up, please excuse.
Get nice and close, Greg.
I'd just like to I'm not asking a question. I'm 73-year-old. I've lived in this area for the last 30 years. I can remember as a kid coming up to Abermain on the train, and it was a beautiful train trip. Slow. That was a beautiful train trip. Something that Bill said earlier, that's why I've got up. He mentioned the Caboolture business line up in Queensland. I was there 3 months ago up in Queensland, north of Brisbane. I caught the train at 3 a.m. to go into Brisbane to get the XPT back to Newcastle or Broadmeadow. And that train was packed with young people wanting to go to work or going to work. And my wife made the comment, we were the only ones there not in high vis, right? And I think that this project has got all the merits. And I'll put a couple of examples. So I've grown up in this area, shopping centres. Who'd have thought Glendale, Katara, Charlestown, Rutherford would ever get the amount of people that go there. I think if the government or the transport get behind this project and get it going ASAP, people will use it. If we build it, it will get used.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hi guys, so I really want to thank you for putting hard work in and that. My name's Rachel Margery. I am actually a 4.5-year stroke survivor. So forgive me if I start missing words. I really want to encourage this project. Lately I've actually been taking the bus, then the train, then the bus. I work at Maitland Hospital. As you can see, I'm still in uniform and I still have my Opal card on me because I've literally got off the bus, got in my car and got here because I'm like, I am not missing this. My day started at 4:15 this morning when the alarm went off. My first bus, which is the 164, leaves at about 5:20 in the morning. My shift starts at 7. I need to be at Maitland Hospital by 7 a.m. to start my shift. I go from Cessnock Library to Maitland Station. Then I get on the train from Maitland Station to Victoria Street because Victoria Street is closer to the hospital than Metford Station, even though it's Metford. Then I get the 188. If I'm lucky, it hasn't been cancelled. The amount of times 188 gets cancelled from Victoria Street to the hospital and vice versa. So I either got to walk uphill or downhill or get a taxi, which is not always cheap. To have this train line reopen would be so much. My morning, my afternoons, I'm an hour and 20 to an hour and 40 on public transport. I have fallen asleep on the bus because I'm tired. And my fatigue kicks in. I can't drive. I can't do the long distances like I used to do when I was younger. I'm 36. I was 32 at the age of, and hearing the doctor say, you've had a stroke. And it's not easy. So to have something like this, and I live now at Bellbird with my mum because I can't live on my own anymore because of my health, but to go from Bellbird to Maitland Hospital, I would only be on the train for about 20 to 30 minutes. And the fatigue, I would be able to take that off and I'd be like, yes, I can do this. So I think this is really encouraging to hear this and to see the plan come into force. And I think if more people know that this is going, people who don't drive or can't drive for whatever reason, for health, I know stairs are not my friend, especially going down. I always take the lift. But people with disabilities, not just mine's a so-called silent disability, but to be able to get a service from over here to Maitland, especially for orthopaedics, or a specialist appointment at Maitland Hospital. Don't get me started on the car parking there. I already had that issue. But to be able to have that access would mean so much to the community that people will use it. People want things that are going to be, like the train trip. It's not going to take an hour and a half to get to work. And I do know there's other staff members from Maitland Hospital that live in this direction. And if they had an option like that, they'd be on that train rather than driving. So thank you so much, and just an encouragement, guys.
Thanks for the support.
Sorry, everyone. Just quickly, it is 7:30, so that was our goal for wrapping up. So if we could just keep questions, comments to a minimum, primarily targeted at questions, and also we do have a Facebook page, as Andrew has mentioned. So if there's something that you forget now and that you think of later, you're welcome to post it on the Facebook page, and we can hopefully provide you an answer in that way. All right. Sorry.
I just have a quick statement, and I get nervous with public speaking, not like Meryl. She does it very, very well. I'm not sure whether you picked up on it on the Cessnock Transport Strategy page that 55% of the people that work in our LGA travel outside our LGA to work, and we are 37% higher with fatalities in our LGA, possibly contributing by fatigue, people driving back an hour or more from Newcastle and other places. And so I'd just like to encourage Meryl and Jenny Aitchison and her representative that when we go to the study, to go with passion, because if that was one of my children, my grandchildren, or my friends and family, or one of those fatalities, what price can you put on that? And that's what I want to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Mawson, Council. Meryl, the point that is more upsetting is for you to make the statement just before that I know how much houses are being built and how many is being built. And for what I know on council, how many is being built is frightening. But the government knows how much houses is being built in this area. And what's happening? Where's the infrastructure? There's none whatsoever. And you're saying about Hexham there, that had to happen because you created a huge bottleneck when you put the flyover across. So obviously we need infrastructure, and if this is going to help, obviously it's got to be a number one. Thank you.
Thanks for that, John.
I have a question. My name's Hannah. I've grown up here as well, and in case you can't see the resemblance, I'm Mim's sister and Dad's daughter, or Bill's daughter. I guess my question, I'm incredibly passionate about this for a number of reasons, being a young person who's grown up in this area we're also out in a bit of more rural from Cessnock itself, but going to university in Newcastle and things like that, I think it's very helpful, and I can imagine that it would provide a lot of opportunities for young people down the track. As someone who is still young and doesn't have a lot of understanding of how this all works, I guess my question is to you, Meryl, but also to Dad and and Andrew. What are tangible ways but also all of us can be helping you guys right now? Are there tangible ways we can be helping? Are there things we can be doing to kind of voice our support and that sort of thing in the community and to the government so that they can see that people want this to happen?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Hannah. And look, I think there are tangible ways. So you can write to your local member, your state member who's Clayton Barr if you're in Cessnock, or Dan Repicoli if you're in Cessnock. You can write to Jenny if you're in Maitland, and myself if you're in Paterson. So just to make it clear, I'm the member for Paterson. My seat starts at Neath and works its way back through Abermain, Western, Curry, and then I take in Thornton, Beresfield, Taro, and go all the way through Raymond Terrace to Nelson Bay. The river is my boundary in Maitland. So if you live in Maitland proper, I'm your member. But if you live in Lorne or Bulwarra, I'm not your member. That's line. I go to Orient Street Greeter in the top. So I don't take in Greta, that's Dan Repicoli's. So if you live in Cessnock or anywhere west of Neath, that's Dan's. And then down further to Stockton, I go to Fern Bay and Williamtown, but Sharon Clayton takes in Stockton. So I'm sort of a thin but quite broad wedge of land from west at Neath all the way over to Nelson Bay, and I represent all those. I've got the second largest seat by population in the country at the moment. So I've got a lot of people to look after. I'm proud to do that, and it's not a problem. But in answer to your question, Hannah, get in contact. I know, Jenny, as the minister, she's got this process that's currently being worked through in terms of the planning department. But yes, get in contact. But I'm going to take away tonight, and I know Chris will take away the passion and the feeling in this room. And it's not lost on me. I've got a daughter at Newcastle Uni as well, and I know the horrors of trying to get to uni and the parking down there and the cost and all of that. So it's not lost on me. But good on you for being passionate, and thanks for asking. Cheers.
So I'm going to use person on the stage prerogative to take over. By the way, Hannah, and everyone, one of the things you can do is, by being here tonight, it's awesome that you're here tonight and showing that to everyone here that you're really important. Tony, there's a slide there in my spare pack which says, my slide in my spare that says something like the Train to Cessnock in state planning. Aha.
Bill, can you just also could you just take everyone through, and particularly for our friends from state transport, one of the big things about the cost of this that I asked you about when we met was stations. I thought, oh my God, it'll blow out in cost if we have these Royal Gold stations. I think you should touch on that because that's an important point. But anyway, thanks. I'm going to sit down now, everyone, but thanks for coming, and I'm here if you need me.
And I'd like to say thanks for Meryl to come along, because obviously, as you've seen, it takes courage to do what she's done tonight. So thank you. Fortunately, that sounds like a bit of a gimme question, actually, because I got a slide on that as well. So this one here, we've heard from Simon and from Chris that Transport for New South Wales is doing a study and looking at the transport needs. What I've got here is a selection of studies of reports that Transport for New South Wales has done over the last 5 years or so. So this here, the Greater Newcastle Metropolitan Plan, 2018. As you can see here, Maitland to Cessnock, it says future transport connections. This one here, same timeframe, Greater Newcastle Future Transport Plan, again released in 2018. Corridor there. It says new or upgraded rail as a visionary initiative for 20 plus years. This one here, draft Hunter Regional Plan 2041, which released in 2 years ago, 2022, says Cessnock to Newcastle rail corridors for investigation 0 to 10 years. My comment right now is, yes, we want to do these things properly, but We've had 3 studies recently that said this corridor is important and we should do it. Why are we waiting another corridor for another study for another year or another year and a half to do more? Tony, thanks. There's another slide that says stations. So Meryl's comment, this really comes back to my comment before about the cost of the project will be, is dependent on the choices made. And so one of the key things about is stations and how we build stations and what we build. If we want to, like, I don't know whether anyone's been to Albury, but the station there is this grand thing that goes forever. If we want to build those stations along here, that's going to take forever, and it's going to cost bucket loads, and it's not necessary. Interesting, the Byron Solar Train was mentioned because this here is the Byron Solar Train station at North Byron Beach. Byron Beach Station. And you can see a simple station, canopy, stuff like that. This is the sort of thing I think we should be imagining. Simple, get it there, put the right facilities there, put the lighting for security, put the Opal cards readers and the customer information stuff. Don't bother with grand buildings. If we need to do that, that can come. Do it. It comes back to my argument. Do it simple. Do it. And get it done. Get the service operating, and then enhance later, rather than hold off and make it too big, too bloated, and we end up with it never happening. Is that what you want? Yeah. You're gonna. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're going to wrap up for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We have gone a little bit of overtime, but that really does exemplify the amount of support and engagement from you guys, which is just amazing to see. Huge thanks to Yaron for opening up the venue tonight. Quirks is actually generally closed on Tuesday, so he's truly... Yeah. He's doing us a massive favour for that one. Thank you so much to Meryl, Christine, Simon, John, Paul Painter, Karen, Mitchell, Rosa and Paul Dunn for your attendance. The support really means so much to our community. Thank you to Tony Moffat and Mark, who have been behind the scenes setting up and managing all the technology and the sound for tonight and changing the slides for us as we go. And without him, we all would have lost our voices yelling. So huge thanks. And another thank you to every single one of you in the audience for your attendance and your support and your engagement. And it's just really amazing to see all of the passion that we have in this room. And I really think with this amount of passion and engagement, we can really get this thing done. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Mim. You've done a great job. And I think everyone should give Mim an extra hand. So thanks again for coming. If you still need a nibble, the kitchen's going to stay open for a little bit longer. If you want to engage. It's all right to sit back and have other people do your work for you. But if this is important, write a letter to your MPs. You can go onto our website. You can subscribe on the website to our newsletter, which means you'll get straight into the inbox. So thanks for your help. Thanks for your attention.